Welcome back to Cyber for Hire, the Managed Security podcast. We just spoke to Brian Hoagley, the CEO of SideChannel, on the topic of how to play matchmaker between vCISOs and clients. If you missed it, I strongly encourage you watch. And by the way, if you'd actually like to see his vinyl collection, you can check out a photo of it on our show page. So be sure to do that. And now it's time for our featured MSP industry topic of the week. Presenting our big idea in business, MSSPs need workers too, landing the right person for the job. When finding cyber talent is difficult, end-user organizations often turn to managed security providers to fill the void. But then where do MSSPs turn to hire their infosec professionals? What are their top strategies for developing and optimizing talent? And for that matter, what makes a quality MSSP infosec pro to begin with? Who's built for this kind of job, working with multiple clients, not just one company? Those are the type of questions that we're going to seek to answer for you today with the help of my co-host Ryan, as always. Ryan, is it easier or harder for MSSPs to find talent than end-user organizations? Are there any inherent advantages or disadvantages when it comes to finding talent?
You know, Brad, this is a massive priority right now, and your question goes right to the heart of it. There is no reason that an MSSP should have more difficulty finding and hiring qualified talent, but they do for almost entirely self-inflicted reasons. What I want to focus on here today is actually, if you think of the larger context, let's just put some numbers to the scope of what we're dealing with. In the United States, there are, as of the end of Q2 2022, there are approximately 1.2 to 1.3 million total cybersecurity professionals in the U.S., okay? That's not 1.2 new ones. That's 1.2 million total people. Some of them are full-time dedicated cybersecurity pros. Others are IT professionals who are also responsible for cybersecurity in their job description. 1.2 million. The reason I keep saying that number is that I want to create the relative understanding of scope. We have an understanding from an industry perspective that depending on which analyst you talk to, there are today somewhere between 600,000 and 750,000 open positions in cybersecurity in the United States alone. That number is much larger globally, but here just in the US, we say we have 1.2 million, we need an additional 600,000. This is not like we just started the other day on this new thing called cybersecurity and we've amassed 1.2 million and we're well on our way to the ultimate objective. We've amassed 1.2 million cybersecurity professionals from the very first day that somebody called it cybersecurity. I'll put that somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 to 50 years ago when people realized that the systems they had available might be vulnerable and might need to be protected. And in all of that time, we have amassed a total of 1.2 million. This is not a temporary phenomenon. This is not a product of the 2022 supposed labor market shortage and some of the challenges that everybody is dealing with in finding workers. This is an existential problem. And I think if we don't solve this problem, we are in a position of a losing battle. We're falling further behind every day in terms of our ability to meet with all of the cyber threats that are out there and to deal with the kinds of complexities that we have in the nature of the technology that we deal with. So to go back to your question, there's no reason that an MSSP should have a harder time finding somebody, but that's kind of a relative thing because quite literally every organization in the industry is struggling with this problem right now.
Well, sure. And as you said, there's 600,000 open cyber positions in the U.S. alone. And down the line, of course, it's up to the cybersecurity industry to see how they can coax and lure and inspire more people to get into cyber as a potential career. But for now, for MSSPs and for end user organizations alike, you have to fish in the pool or the pond that currently exists of what is currently out there. So for what is currently out there, I want to talk a little bit about some of the top strategies for developing and optimizing the talent that does exist. So let's start with this question. Who is right for the job? Like, what makes a quality MSSP professional? What are the attributes that you're looking for if you are on the service provider side of things and looking to bolster your personnel?
It gets right down to the issue of who are the humans. And I think everyone that's already in the industry, they immediately had a reaction, a visual image pop into their head when you asked that question. We know what we think a cybersecurity professional looks like as of today, but that's a very restrictive definition. The first thing that I will say is, number one, we need to stop fetishizing the concept of complexity and genius as a job qualification to participate in this industry. As you know very well, from a journalist perspective, from a business perspective, and from a technician's perspective, the tools that we use in this industry have advanced dramatically in the last 5 to 10 years. The user interfaces have become much more palatable to non-code level professionals, the people who are actually sitting in the chair monitoring alerts and doing system updates, driving patches into the systems that we are responsible for. Point and click is the most essential technical skill that people have. And obviously, I'm oversimplifying there. But what I'm trying to get to is, one does not need 25 years of deep experience in white hat, black hat hacking and the deeper nuances of cybersecurity at a philosophical and technical level. It is not necessary that we find people who have been doing what we do for 5 to 10 years, right? I find that from a recruiting point of view, that is a self-defeating mechanism. Read the ad on Indeed. Look at the job posting on the website. If it says somewhere in there, must have 5 to 10 years experience doing X, well, you've already eliminated 90+% of the potential people who are qualified to do what we do. We need people who have complexity skills, right, to be able to understand the variety of threats that we deal with. We need people who are detail and process oriented, but we also need people who have the ability to communicate complex technical topics in plain English to non-technical audiences, because that's where our biggest cybersecurity threats are. It's not a question of systems configuration and writing all of the most advanced code in applications and in systems administration tools. That's one neighborhood of cybersecurity. But when we say as an industry that the number one cause of cybersecurity threat is human behavior, what we need are people who can talk to people in a persuasive, non-threatening, non-condescending way and get them to adjust their behavior and actually stop clicking on stuff that's going to cause those cybersecurity problems.
Okay, so Ryan, let me follow up and we can dig even a little bit deeper into this. If you are a conventional CISO or security professional working at one singular organization, that's one thing. If you're working for an MSSP type of an organization, then you might be bouncing back and forth between multiple organizations that have different needs and different levels of cybersecurity maturity. So are there certain skill sets that are particularly important and translate well over to working specifically on the MSSP side of the equation? You know, what skills or expertise do you need to have to be able to fulfill the functions of an MSSP that maybe you don't need to have if you're just working for one singular organization?
That's a great question, because there's already enough inherent complexity in cybersecurity that if you work for one organization, you will manage multiple systems, you will be responsible for multiple applications and data sets, you will be seeking and preventing a very broad variety of technical threats out there in the bad guy environment. To be able to manage many ideas at the same time is already an inherent qualification. But I think it's important for service providers to take that next step. We need to stop thinking of this only from the perspective of the technical work that we do and put ourselves in the shoes of the people that we deal with on the other side of this equation. If I have one boss and I have 1,000 things to do, my technical working process every day, right? I will show up at 8, I will leave at 5, I will have a checklist of things that I need to follow. And the checklist is the essential professional tool when it comes to cybersecurity. Many very advanced thinkers in the industry have kind of arrived at that point where we need to stop imagining that one person can keep all of these ideas in their head all at the same time and just naturally remember everything. We need to write it down. We need to be as detailed and as careful as possible. We need to be able to follow that checklist. But in a service provider organization, when you will be talking to 2, 3, 4, potentially 20 different clients in a single day, we need to surrender our position of control, and we need to adopt that position of a customer service professional. Right now, there's lots of engineers, lots of very advanced technical professionals who really bristle when I say cybersecurity equals customer service. I'm not even remotely suggesting that that's the caliber of complexity or difficulty that we're dealing with, but I am suggesting the personality that we're dealing with. You have to be able to greet people, to receive them, to welcome them into the conversation, understand their situation, practice empathy and understanding, use active listening, and then get into step 1, 2, 3 of the checklist that you are executing. That is a missing skill, I believe, across the industry, and it's something that we're not actively recruiting for. I think if we use that as job criteria number 1, we would find that there's infinitely more people who meet that criteria. And by the way, we're smart people. We can teach them how to use our technical systems. Here's my tool. I can teach you how to use this tool to do your job. But teaching you how to be good with people, boy, that's going to take a long time in an onboarding process. We should probably not try to train that. We should hire for that capability.
So, Ryan, wrapping up this conversation, now that we've established what we're looking for in an infosec professional, particularly working for a managed security services provider, do you have any quick top best practices or strategies for being able to develop and optimize those particular sets of skills so you can build out that talent pipeline?
In fact, I think this is, this I believe is the topic of the day for our industry. We need to figure this out. And I've been thinking and working with clients deeply on this for a long time. I think number 1, we begin with the obvious. If we need more people, let's start by plugging the hole that is leaking people out of the industry. Let's focus on keeping the ones that we already have, principally by giving them an understanding of the value they provide and ensuring some semblance of quality of life. I'm not going to use work-life balance because I don't believe that that's the accurate mechanism, but we do need to keep the humans that we already have by making sure that they feel good, that they are happy to be here, and that they're not actively seeking a new job. Number 2, I think we need to define the roadmap of participating in a cybersecurity job. Right now, the job description sounds a little bit like, come on in, do an impossible job, work 80 hours a week, you'll never succeed, but you will be blamed for everything that goes wrong in the process. Would you like to start on Monday? That is not a really compelling offer. What we need to do is to say, in the first month, this will be your experience. In your first job role, here are the keys that we're looking for success. And then as you proceed, here are the opportunities for expansion, for professional development, for promotion, for raises that you will enjoy in your job roadmap. If we don't describe the future, why would people bother to get started with us? And then finally, I would say we need to engage the new generation, right? It is everyone in the industry's job to be talking to young people, whether we start at the K through 12 level, at the university level, at the I just graduated and I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, I'm looking for a job level. Everywhere, it is our job to proactively engage the new generation. Don't tell them, oh, this is hard over here and you're not qualified for this job, so go back and spend 3 more years getting training and certification. Let's meet them where they are. Let's tell them why this is important, and let's bring them into the organization in as high a quantity as possible. And then let's filter through that in the human resources process. I think we will struggle forever to find enough people to fill these jobs in the cybersecurity profession, but that doesn't mean that that's acceptable. We have to get busy at bringing in new people. And by the way, pay an incentive. Give a bounty. If your engineer has a friend that they can recruit for you and bring them into the organization, that should be worth cash money. That should be worth a new keyboard or a brand new 80-inch monitor that engineer can use to do their own job every day. Find ways to reward everyone to participate in engaging that new generation of cybersecurity pros. Excellent. That's our big idea for today. Obviously, we did not solve this problem because that's not possible in the amount of time that we have here. But we hope that we've sparked a conversation. We want to hear back from everybody out there. Please remember, reach out. We've got our email, we've got our show page, and we want you guys to give us your feedback. Where do we find the talent? How do we recruit them? How do we convince the new generation that this is a cool job and they actually want to join us in the depths of the cybersecurity profession? But now that we've wrapped up that topic, we want to move into our news rundown. We got that coming up shortly. Before we dive into the news and the headlines, we have our security topic that we like to call Dear Cyber for Hire. This is an advice column segment where we get to play marriage counselor between MSPs and their clients to help them understand what's going on in the relationship and mend fences when they need to be mended. The following letter that we're going to share may have been lightly edited for our purposes here today, but the drama that's represented here is absolutely real for listeners that we talk to. Bradley, who are we counseling today?
Well, let's find out. Dear Cyber for Hire, woe is me. This suite of services my managed security provider sold me is not so sweet at all. In fact, you might say I've even soured on them. You see, my MSP never told me that some of the services available in this bundled package deal were available all along on an a la carte basis. Instead of picking and choosing services individually and saving money in the process, I'm paying for extras I don't even need. Why didn't they tell me this was an option? Do I have grounds to renegotiate the terms of this relationship? Sincerely, Deceived in Detroit. Ryan, do your thing.
Indeed. And I will say, to answer the very tactical question in there, yes, you can always renegotiate the structure of the agreement. There has yet to ever have been written a contract that cannot be renegotiated. So please make sure that you are getting what you want. But to answer the deeper question, why did they not tell me that these things were available on an a la carte basis? The answer, as always, is cash money. Right? As service providers, we have a vested interest in winning new customers and engaging them in as large of a standardized contract agreement for as long a period as possible. That's how our business model ticks. We get fixed agreements, we get predictive services, we get standard repeatable activities, and everything is included and everything lasts for a minimum of 3 years. This is success in our world. But that doesn't mean that that's exactly what the customer wants. And I want to put an emphasis here on the concept of relationship psychology. If your first foray into a relationship is to ask for everything in order to get started on day one, you will alienate almost everyone in that process. If my standard sales pitch to you is, I am a service provider, and in order for you to do anything with me, you must agree to do everything with me. Again, I get why that's good for us on the service provider side, but I also get why that is instantly alienating from the customer's perspective. We need to crawl, walk, run, or to borrow the human terminology, we need to meet people, date them, get committed to them, engage them, and then eventually get married to these people. It is ideal that we provide every service to every customer on our terms according to our standard agreement. But we have to remember, customers actually have to want to be in business with us. And that means they need to see us do one thing and do it well and not blow off a date for coffee that we made on Wednesday, right? We need to show up, we need to deliver, and then ask for the next opportunity and earn our way in to the broader relationship. We need to engage, we need to expand, and then we need to standardize. And if we don't do that, we're going to have a whole lot of very sad customers who feel deceived once the contract is signed.
So, Ryan, what do we do in this case? The transgression has already taken place. How do we now get both parties back on the same page? How do we fix this?
You know, this has tactical implications because we should not go in here and say, okay, you're unhappy. Let's cancel parts 2, 3, and 4 of the service package and focus only on number 1, because who's going to be responsible for 2, 3, and 4? Cybersecurity is not a project that begins and ends. It is a continuous, evergreen operating responsibility. And if I stop doing one part, the customer needs to start doing it there. So the advice here is start with where you are today and ask them, what would you like to take back on as your internal responsibilities? And then let's define a roadmap to get those things transitioned back into your hands as rapidly and as smoothly as possible to ensure no uncovered responsibilities and no disruption to your regular operating environment. If we can put it in those terms, there's a very solid chance the customer will just wake up and admit, you know what, you're right. I didn't like all of these things all at once, but now that I get into the practical reality of having to be responsible for them, okay, fine, you're better at it. It's integrated. You should keep those things. You can rehab this relationship, but it starts where you are right now. Do not try to go back to zero state and then only do one thing. Look for logical ways to disengage on pieces of the agreement and hand that back over to the customer. Chances are they're going to say, no, thank you. You keep doing it. Just make sure you don't try to sneak anything by me next time we sign an agreement.
All right, some sage advice there from my partner, Ryan Morris. Hopefully our listeners have learned from this and don't make the same mistake. And remember, if you've been struggling with your managed security services relationship, whether you're the user or the provider, we want to hear from you. So please write to us at cyberforhire@cyberriskalliance.com, and we might just use your letter in a future episode. Well, as any security practitioner can tell you, there's no shortage of headlines filling up the cyber news feeds every single day. So we wanted to highlight a few important news and research items from the always busy cyber news cycle that we curated just for you. And so we present to you the security detail. Here we go. Headline number 1. Layoffs mount in October and November as cybersecurity vendors are hunkering down in the face of increasingly uncertain economic indicators. Ryan.
The economy is uncertain. That doesn't mean that it's in recession, and it doesn't mean that everything is already terrible, but there seems to be some self-fulfilling behavior. I think the most interesting part of this particular statistic is that in the month of October, the U.S. economy added a total of 261,000 net new jobs. And yet, the cybersecurity and broader technology industry is going through aggressive layoffs. My observation is this is not an economy-wide problem. This is the consequence of overhiring during the desperately exuberant times of growth during the pandemic. And what we're doing, we're not seeing companies fall apart in bad situations. What we're seeing is right-sizing and fixing some of those really irresponsible overhiring things. So we will see some layoffs, but it's not the end of the world. The industry is still growing. Headline number 2, Bradley, citing research from Sedaris and Stairwell, a report from SC Media warns that some cybercriminal groups are experimenting with more destructive ransomware attacks that permanently corrupt affected data. Thoughts?
Yeah, this potentially raises the stakes of any extortion attempt. You're going to be ratcheting up the pressure if you're the attacker there on the victim. The researchers in question here specifically cited XMatter as the culprit. That's a .NET exfiltration tool that's previously been associated with the Black Matter ransomware group. The SC report, which is written by Mengen Shao, Also cites a Q3 report from Dragos referencing politically motivated nation-state attacks, certainly from Russia as an example. Mengen notes that these type of attacks in particular bear the risk of having a data wiping or destructive element to them. So bottom line, make sure that your managed security services provider and your end user client, whichever side of the equation you're on, that you're on the same page about things like business continuity plans and backups, disaster recovery, that sort of thing. All right, headline number 3. The cyber.org range, a program initiated in Louisiana to provide cybersecurity education for K through 12 students, will be expanding to be available in all 50 states thanks to new funding from the CISA Cybersecurity Education and Training Assurance Program. Ryan, some analysis.
We are nothing if not complicated algorithms, but this algorithm is actually something we should all pay attention to. As we've been discussing all throughout this episode, the access to qualified humans who can join us in the cybersecurity profession is job number 1. And this is a rare piece of very good news from a government program that is taking an initiative that has been tested and tried in Louisiana. It is an online set of training programs, modules, certification testing that will provide essential skills to kids from K through 12 in the area of cybersecurity. It works. It's actually produced very good results, and the kind of trending analysis is that it's not only creating people who might want to do this for a living, but it's also creating general citizens who are less likely to click on stupid things. So I think that's a really good thing. But now that it works, it's being expanded, and it's something that is going to be available in all 50 states. As a service provider and as an end user, I need to proactively seek this program. Don't just wait for people to come in and say, have you heard of it? Are you participating? Go to your school boards, go to your local district and talk to the technology directors, talk to the school board. Make sure that they understand that this program is out there, and it is in all of our best interest to get more kids to pay attention to this. So, rare piece of good news from a government program. Let's move on to headline number 4. Microsoft in early November issued important patches for 2 critical Microsoft Exchange server flaws that were found to be actively exploited by a state-sponsored threat actor. Bradley, what do we need to know?
Yeah, well, one of these vulnerabilities allowed elevation of privilege. The other one allowed for remote code execution. What's interesting here is noted in a report by Joe Panettiere of MSSP Alert is that this latest pairing of zero-day vulnerabilities, they might compel certain MSPs, MSSPs, and the like to accelerate their migrations from on-prem Microsoft Exchange implementations to Microsoft 365 cloud services. And that's because Exchange Online doesn't suffer from these particular vulnerabilities. And so I agree that it will be interesting to see if this will serve to motivate certain organizations that have been slow to move their email service and other assets to the cloud. Maybe this will be the impetus that they need. And finally, drum roll, please, we have our irrelevant news item of the week. Now, this is a real news pitch that Ryan or I has received in our inboxes for reasons that are entirely inexplicable to us. And so, Ryan, you'll be excited to know that the resort at Paws Up, which is Montana's premier luxury ranch resort, is offering a new amenity, moon bikes, which apparently is conquering the American market. It is the world's first electric snow bike. I actually looked up a picture of one of these things. It's like the front of it has like a ski, as if you were, basically, skiing down a mountain. The back of it kind of has this sort of tractor tread look to it. I don't know. I think it's my favorite kind of bike because it's the bike you don't actually have to pedal, and so you don't actually have to do any hard work. It's just one of those where I'm like, if this is the world's first of its kind, has it been proven enough yet? Like usually when somebody first invents something like, flying cars or self-driving cars, I usually want to wait a while till they get all the kinks out and let somebody else crash it before I try it.
Being the beta tester for somebody's unproven technology, that's actually what makes geeks naturally attracted to what we do for a living. We are nerds on purpose and voluntarily. I would say, sign me up. I grew up as a kid doing snowmobiling treks into the mountains in the Western Rockies, and I will tell you, it is not only a safe exercise, but it is a desperately entertaining and fun exercise. This has absolutely nothing to do with our world of cybersecurity, but it does give me a new idea of where we might need to host a conference for all the cybersecurity professionals. Let's all journey to Montana in January and let's do some moon biking. That's excellent.
Yeah, well, no kidding. The funny thing is that the one thing I don't see here is an invitation to actually come to Montana to try it out, right? And that's the missing ingredient here. I mean, I will say it is, even though there's a little bit of that underlying fear, it does sound pretty cool, kind of an alternate to snowmobiling, which I haven't tried myself for that matter.
Moon bikes might be the future. And, hey, in a world of global warming where some of the world is going to melt and the other part is going to freeze really hard, half the population might be very interested in this new transportation.
Yeah, that's very true, Ryan. And with that, it looks like we've run out of time. But don't worry, we'll be back again soon for episode number 4. Meanwhile, feel free to check out even more cybersecurity podcast content on the SC Media, MSSP Alert, and Channel E2E websites. Until next time, I'm Bradley Barth.
And I'm Ryan Morris, and we want to keep this conversation going, so please reach out to us with any of your questions, comments, and insights about the business of cybersecurity. We'll keep the conversation going on the next episode of Cyber for Hire, your inside source for cyber outsourcing.